Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Okay, I want to get right into this morning. We're going to go into Isaiah 66 now. We've covered Isaiah 65, demonstrating that it predicted the wedding banquet and the new creation that would flow from it. The New Jerusalem that would come as a result of the destruction of the old creation, the old Israel, the old Jerusalem. And Isaiah 66. And by the way, let me remind you that most commentators, now here's what's interesting. I'm seeing an increasing number of postmillennialists who are arguing, well, you know, Isaiah 65 and Isaiah 66, they predicted the coming of the new creation in AD 70. Kenneth Gentry takes that position. Joel McDermott took that position. Gary DeMar takes that position. So what this means is that we have Isaiah 65 and 66 predicting the coming of the Lord, which is the coming of the wedding banquet, which is nothing less than the resurrection, by the way. And we have the new creation, the new heaven and new earth, all of which came in AD 70, per many postmillennialists. Oh, but wait, we are told AD 70 foreshadowed the real end of the age, the real new heaven and the earth, the real new Jerusalem. So here's what we have. In AD 70, according to this view, the spiritual new creation came into being, but it foreshadowed the coming of the physical new creation. Well, folks, I'm sorry, that completely reverses God's modus operandi. God has always operated from the material to the spiritual. 1 Corinthians 15:46. That which is spiritual is not first. And yet that's precisely what the postmillennialists do when they say, oh yes, the spiritual new creation, the spiritual new Jerusalem came in AD 70, but it foreshadowed the coming of the real, the physical, the material new creation and the literal new Jerusalem, although they want to hedge on whether or not it's a literal, physical new Jerusalem. Oh well. Anyway, so we have to see that Isaiah 65 and 66 is the prediction of the new creation foretold by Hebrews 12, by 2 Peter 3, by Revelation 21. When we read Kenneth Gentry say, contrary to the great traditional reading, and contrary to what it might seem on the reading of it, Revelation 21 is not talking about the consummate new heaven and new earth. No, Kenneth Gentry says it applied to AD 70. Folks, do you see the problem that he presents for himself in that? And for any other postmillennialist that agrees with it? And he said that in his book, Navigating the Book of Revelation, by the way, if you want to check that out. So, I want us to go to Isaiah 66, and I've got to tell you, in preparation for making the videos here from Isaiah 66, I kept thinking to myself, how in the world am I going to condense everything that is in Isaiah 66 that is relevant to a small, relatively small number of videos? I mean, this chapter is chock full of relevant information that affects our understanding of Matthew 25 and the Olivet Discourse as a whole on the question, is the Olivet Discourse divided? Now, here's my basic premise. Isaiah 66 foretold the coming of the Lord that would occur in AD 70. Isaiah 66 foretold the coming of the new heaven and the new earth and the new Jerusalem. But the coming of the Lord to bring in the new creation is the coming of the Lord in Matthew chapter 25, 1 to 13. Therefore, Isaiah 66 foretold the coming of the Lord of Matthew 25, 1 to 13, which was in fact the coming of the Lord to bring in the new creation in AD 70. That's my basic argument. And so I'm going to present for you several facts that buttress that conclusion and that argument. Point number one. In Isaiah 66, verse 1, the Lord said, "Heaven is my throne, earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you will build for me?" Now that's speaking of the magnificence of God, the glory of Yahweh. There is no physical edifice of any kind that could contain the glory of God. You know, Solomon, when he dedicated his fantastic temple, in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and following, Solomon said, "Who am I? And what are my people? And what is this house that it should contain you? For the whole earth and the heaven of the heavens cannot contain you." Solomon knew that no matter how glorious a physical temple might be, it could not contain the glory of God. Okay, so in Acts chapter 17, verse 49, Stephen is standing in the temple. That glorious Herodian temple that was one of the wonders of the ancient world. And he said, "God does not dwell in temples made with hands." Oh my goodness. And you know what he had the audacity to do? He had the audacity to quote from Isaiah 66 verse 1. "Heaven is my throne, earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you will build for me?" And it's about that point they took up stones to stone him. They were not going to contemplate. They were not going to consider. They were not going to accept any depreciation of the glory of that temple, in spite of the fact that their own greatest prophet had foretold, number one, there's no house that could contain the Lord, and number two, as we will see, even Isaiah foretold the destruction of that magnificent temple. And they were not going to hear about it. And so they killed Stephen. Now, this is just the groundwork. This is just the foundation for what Isaiah will go ahead and say, what Yahweh will say through Isaiah in the rest of the chapter. But I'll give you a hint. The Lord says, "Where's the house that you will build for me? Where's the house that will contain me?" But then he says, "With the man that is of a contrite and humble heart," guess what? "I'll dwell in him." Ooh. This is a spiritual dwelling place, not literal. You see, God said, "I made all material creation. I made everything that you see. But it still can't contain me. It can testify of me, but it can't contain me." But you know what? Verse 2, "On this one will I look, on him who is poor and of a contrite spirit, and who trembles at my word." That's the person. That's the person in whom I will dwell. That's who I will accept. We have here the foreshadowing and the foretaste of a coming spiritual temple of God, the church of the living God, of God dwelling in man, with man, not in physical temples, but in the heart. Now, as we will see, this would happen with the dissolution of the old temple that would lead to that new creation in which God would dwell in us, just like Ezekiel 47. After describing this incredible temple, which is so, it's so difficult. Nonetheless, at the end of the great passage, "It shall be said of that place," that temple, God is there. That is Emmanuel, God with us. Hey, listen, thank you for joining me for this morning's morning musing. Do not forget the fantastic, February 3-book special. One Root, One Kingdom, All Nations, a refutation of the charge of replacement theology, and a refutation of the Israel-only view, and Like Father, Like Son on Clouds of Glory, a powerful, powerful presentation of the very nature of the coming of the Lord as the bridegroom for the wedding of Matthew chapter 25, and free of charge, throwing it in, Hebrews, Covenants in Contrast by Gene Fadley. If you purchased each one of these separately, it cost you $61. For the month of February 2021, U.S. orders only, total delivered price, $35. Go to my website. There's a banner at the top. Just click on it and follow it. You'll be glad you did. You have a fantastic weekend. Please be safe. I'll see you on Monday.